Tick has become one of the most annoying brawlers to play against due to his ability to deal constant chip damage and ability to defend himself well from his biggest threats. Let's take a look at how Tick became this annoying and the concepts of chip damage and self-sufficiency. Before we get into the video, let's have our weekly talk about subbing and whatnot. As usual, make sure you like and comment on the video, as it really helps out. 15% of you are still subscribed, so make sure to make it more like megaboxes and star drops and not like megaboxes and eggs. Also, watching the full video really helps out with the algorithm, so if you enjoy the content, make sure to watch till the end. Of course, if you don't like the video, you don't have to force yourself to watch the full thing. I wouldn't blame you, as this is an entire video about the most annoying brawler in the game. With that out of the way, let's unfortunately get to talking about Tick. Tick's defining feature, or lack thereof, is his health. Tick's health is the lowest of any brawler in the game. At max level, Tick's health comes out to an astounding 4,400. This makes it so that Tick must have two things in order to be viable: the tools for a successful passive playstyle and the tools to be able to deal with his main weakness, aggressive brawlers. I'll touch more on these two aspects later, but for now, I'll give a general overview of Tick. Let's talk about Tick's main attack first. In Tick's main attack, he throws 3 mines that have a larger spread with the farther range that Tick throws them. So if Tick throws them on top of himself, there will be virtually no spread. If Tick throws them at his max range, there will be a large spread between the mines. Each mine deals 1280 damage and explodes either when it comes into contact with an enemy or after 2 seconds. Tick's main attack isn't the strongest one on paper, but he can control areas very well with his multiple mines and their 2-second explode time, as well as his extremely long range for a thrower, with an 8.67 tile range. If aimed correctly, he can deal decent damage up close, but not enough to deal effectively with his counters. Tick's main attack also has another large disadvantage. It has a 2.4-second reload speed, otherwise known as a very slow reload speed. This balances out the insane area his attack can cover and forces Tick to be smart about his mine placements, as several wasted shots can easily lead to an assassin killing Tick with little resistance, or leading an entire area of the map that should have been covered by Tick to be uncovered, allowing the opponents to gain control. Now let's talk about Tick's super. Tick's super is his head, and it chases the nearest enemy and explodes upon impact, or after being killed, dealing 4,000 damage in a 2-tile radius after the explosion. Tick's super is his finishing move. What is a finishing move? A finishing move is a powerful attack that is meant to finish off an already weak enemy. A finishing move is best used once an enemy is at lower health and is not meant to initially damage an enemy. For Tick, if you use your super immediately on another opponent who has full ammo and health, they will either easily take care of the head or will still have enough health to recover. But if you use the super strategically and use it to finish off rather than start off an enemy, the enemy will likely either die or be in a very vulnerable position, making it easier for Tick or his teammates to get the kill. Other than finishing off enemies, Tick's super has a much more important use: dealing with aggressive brawlers. Aggressive brawlers are Tick's biggest hard counter, due to Tick's low health and his status as a thrower, whose entire class is weak to aggro brawlers due to their inability to deal burst damage, their average speeds, and their inability to deal reliable damage up close. Tick, of course, checks all of these boxes, meaning that he is extremely vulnerable to aggressive brawlers. This is where his super comes in. His super is able to defend Tick by acting aggressively itself, being able to deal good damage up close to aggro brawlers, threatening Tick's survival. But the most important part is that Tick's super has knockback as well, letting Tick run farther away and finish off the enemy at a distance, while the enemy is not only down 4,000 health, but is in a less advantageous position compared to Tick, who is now safe from the threat. Now that I have gone over the base Tick form, let's talk about Tick's passive playstyle. What is a passive playstyle? A passive playstyle is having minimal contact with the enemy and is mostly focused on controlling areas and survival. On the other hand, having an aggressive playstyle is having constant contact with the enemy and is focused on eliminating enemy brawlers, or at least dealing large amounts of damage for the brawlers with the passive playstyle to finish off. To have a successful team, you need both types of playstyles to synergize. Of course, no brawler fits neatly into either of these. Once Tick gets his super, He can start a play aggressively in order to get near the enemy to have the best chance of his super actually hitting the enemy. But other than that, Tick is a mostly passive brawler, whose main use is to hide behind walls, control areas, and deal constant chip damage. Chip damage seems to be such a used word nowadays, but what does it actually mean? Chip damage is the continual dealing of small amounts of damage. This is the opposite of burst damage, which is the dealing of a large amount of damage within a short amount of time. For example, chip damage would be dealing 200 damage consistently for 40 seconds, while burst damage would be dealing 2,000 damage quickly in 4 seconds. Chip damage is more consistent, more safe, but takes much longer, while burst damage is less consistent and less safe, but can easily wipe out an enemy quickly. So how does the concept of chip damage relate to Tick? Well, Tick's ability to deal chip damage is his main strength. As I've mentioned before, Tick is a passive brawler, which means that he rarely purposefully comes into full contact with the enemy and instead focuses on area denial. But a passive playstyle can also include dealing chip damage. And that's the case with Tick. The nature of Tick's playstyle and his main attack allow him to be very successful at dealing chip damage, not being able to deal a lot of damage at once, but consistently hitting one or even two of his mines on the enemy. In many ways, Tick is actually similar to the mascot of chip damage, Gene. Gene is what everyone thinks of when someone mentions chip damage. His own attack splits into 6 different projectiles that do 326 damage each. This allows Gene to extend his range and constantly chip opponents for 300 or so damage, not letting them heal and slowly whittling down their health. So how is this similar to Tick? Well, the stats will tell you they aren't the most similar, as Tick deals around 1,200 damage, which is 4 times one of Gene's split projectiles, and is a thrower, which Gene isn't. But if we operate under the assumption that each of Tick's mines is equivalent to 2 Gene shots, things become a lot more similar. Tick still has a large advantage in terms of damage, but the basic concept behind the attack becomes much closer. Both have multiple projectiles that, based on the range that the attack is, will deal a large amount of damage, or a smaller amount of damage. Both of the attacks have a chance of multiple projectiles hitting, increasing the damage. As for the brawlers themselves, both of them stay at a range, utilizing a passive playstyle to slowly chip away damage from opponents to prevent healing. And then they have their supers. Once again, on paper, they seem radically different. One deals a large amount of damage and is used to push away enemies, while the other deals no damage without the star power and is used to pull in enemies. But in actuality, both serve similar purposes, a finisher. If Tick is using the super in an offensive sense, then the super actually becomes similar to the purpose of Gene's, which is finishing off an enemy that you have whittled down the health of. They both even have a similar gadget, which knockbacks an enemy and is used to defend against aggressive brawlers. So now we've established that Tick's main purpose is to deal chip damage and control areas. But there is a glaring weakness to Tick that I have mentioned before, aggressive brawlers. For all of this talk about chip damage, if Tick dies quickly to an aggressive brawler, all the chip damage is for nothing. Because of this, Tick must have an element of self-sufficiency. To continue the theme of defining words you probably already know, I'm going to define self-sufficiency. Self-sufficiency is the ability for a brawler to theoretically be able to deal with every other brawler in the game. For Tick, he theoretically should have a chance, even if it's a small one, against a Lily or another aggro brawler. Because of this, to be able to have that chance, Tick needs defensive tools. As I've mentioned before, his super is the main defensive tool he has against enemies. But for a brawler with only 4,400 health, just a super won't cut it in terms of defensive tools. To fix this issue and give Tick an element of self-sufficiency, Supercell began to add defensive elements to his kit. They gave him a gadget called Backup Mine. This was similar to Shelly's gadget Fast Forward, in that it allowed him to dash forward, but also left a mine that dealt 700 damage. This was mainly used for dodging attacks, but also helped in getting away from aggressive brawlers and dealing a bit of damage as well. This was a skillful gadget that did add an element of self-sufficiency, but was too niche for popular use, and the mine damage was nowhere near enough, leading Backup Mine to be nowhere near as useful as Tick's second gadget, causing it to be reworked into Mine Mania. Mine Mania made it so that Tick's next main attack would fire 6 mines instead of 3. This gadget was useful for covering larger areas than usual, and could also deal a little more burst damage if Tick shot it at himself, being able to force enemies who got too close to either push back or take a large amount of damage. This wasn't his best gadget, but it was yet another attempt by Supercell to make him self-sufficient. But his other gadget, Last Hurrah, was a successful attempt by Supercell. This gadget made it so that Tick gained a 50% shield for 1 second, and then dealt 1280 damage to enemies and knocked them back if they were inside the radius. Against assassins and other aggressive brawlers, this was a must-have, as it not only halved all incoming damage but provided a useful knockback with the damage of one Tick's mines. This made it so fighting a Tick at close range without his super was no longer a free kill, as the gadget could protect him and push you back. This allowed Tick to match much better against aggressive brawlers, fulfilling his self-sufficiency. Supercell didn't stop there with trying to improve Tick's defenses, as they went and added a mythic gear to him as well. The mythic gear was called Thick Head, and made it so that Tick's head received another 1000 HP. This gave Tick's head a better chance of survival and helped Tick's defenses by forcing the enemy to often unload more ammo than they used to on Tick's head, either not being able to kill it and being pushed back, or not having enough ammo to punish Tick after killing the head. With these defensive elements added to Tick's mechanically weak defenses, he started to become a more viable option against aggressive brawlers, making him into a self-sufficient brawler. While this was positive, it caused a side effect that made Tick into who he is today: annoyingness. I know you've seen the title, and you're asking why I haven't talked about Tick's annoyingness until now. I don't know the answer to that question either. Just roll with it like Daryl. But the continuous addition of defensive tools to Tick turned from an already annoying brawler to face against to inarguably the most annoying brawler to play against. But why is Tick so annoying? The main reason for his annoyance stems from my first major talking point in this video: chip damage. By its very nature, chip damage is supposed to be annoying. Chip damage slowly whittles down your health, not allowing you to heal, and if the opponent is good or behind a wall, not allowing you to get a shot back. It is very annoying to face off against a skilled Tick or Gene player because they can smartly balance staying out of reach while consistently hitting you for chip damage and not allowing you to heal. This leads to a frustrating experience for the person on the receiving end of this, as not only can they not attack the enemy, but they aren't able to heal up as well due to the constant damage from the opponent. This is where aggressive brawlers come in. While a brawler without much burst damage, range, or speed like Gus or Poco would struggle heavily against Gene or Tick, aggressive brawlers will thrive against them. If a Leon can strafe properly, then he can easily get close to a Tick with his fast speed, and easily take care of the Tick with his insane burst damage. This kept Tick from being too powerful, as it allowed Tick to be easily countered by certain brawlers. This prevented him from being too annoying, as even if a Tick was bullying you or a teammate, as long as you had an aggressive brawler to take care of the Tick would just be fodder for them. But then Supercell decided that they had to make Tick self-sufficient, and so they added all the things that I outlined earlier: his 2 gadgets and his mythic gear. Suddenly, the aggressive brawler counter was no longer as powerful as before. That same Leon matchup could be avoided with his Last Hurrah gadget, and if Tick had his super, Leon could no longer as easily melt through it, letting Tick get away to safety. Now, even if you had an aggressive brawler on the team, they could easily be taken out with Tick's new defensive tools, leading to Tick becoming much more annoying to stop, as you could no longer go right up to him and melt him. It now took much more strategy to kill a good Tick player, and by the time you could even kill him, he would have been able to deal large amounts of chip damage, and his team would have gained control of the map. I haven't even mentioned it yet, but Tick's well-oiled star power lets him recover health 2 seconds faster than usual if he doesn't attack or take damage. This made killing Tick a much more difficult task because if he managed to get away from an attack and heal up, he could return to the battle much quicker with full health and rain terror once again. This, along with his other defensive tools, his status as a member of the most annoying class in the game, and his excellence in chip damage, and you have the perfect recipe for the most annoying brawler in the game. In the present day, things have gotten a little interesting. As we all know, the meta has shifted into a much more aggressive one. Even though Tick now has much better tools to deal with them, aggressive brawlers are still his main weakness. Because of that weakness, Tick has become weaker due to the power of aggressive brawlers, and has become a brawler that has many different counters. The release of hypercharges certainly hasn't helped him either. The stat buffs, and especially the speed buffs, have impacted all throwers' place in the meta, making them less viable and easier to counter. And how did Supercell counteract this? By giving Tick a hypercharge, of course. This hypercharge allowed Tick's super to deploy quicker and follow enemies much faster. And once the mine exploded, 6 mines would drop around it, with each dealing 4,000 damage. You know the old saying, if you can't beat them, join them. This hypercharge allowed Tick to once again have a fighting chance against aggressive brawlers and made his super much more likely to hit an enemy. And even if it didn't, it would spawn the mines around it, making it a no-cross zone because each of the mines dealt absolutely ridiculous damage. This prevented aggressive brawlers from continuing to pursue Tick after destroying the Tick head, allowing Tick to live to fight another day. Like with Tick's defensive upgrades, this hypercharge had a major side effect. It made Tick even more annoying. Thanks for watching. Watch this video, or this playlist, or join the Discord server.